You know, I've made some lists about werewolves, about body horror. I mean, shit, even Luke made a list about obscure films made by legendary horror directors. All that I thought were really fun, really solid ideas. But, you know, they didn't quite take off with you guys. But, yeah, should have known that when I spill my guts and talk about some films that I don't want to ever see again, that's the one. That was the one for you guys. And now I got to do it again. Before we hop into the list, the only thing that I do want to make clear, because I got a lot of comments, a lot of people saying, hey, some of these aren't very disturbing, some of these aren't horror, and yes, these are not going to be pure horror. Some horror movies might pop up on this list, and potentially if this one does well, so again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, blow this thing up like last time, and I'll keep this series going, baby. But yeah, if you don't like the movies that are on here, just know that these are personal touches. Just because I find something disturbing that you don't doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It's my list. Doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's, you know, your opinion. Don't take it too serious, guys. I understand. Serbian film, absolutely horrendous, disgusting film. Solo, something I haven't talked about on the channel yet, but I'm saving it for another list. So we'll get there, but just know, I don't want to go through and just hit all of the same films that everybody else talks about all the time. I want to talk about ones that personally affect me, and hopefully, if all goes right, that's the magic of these videos. And that's enough. That's all the housekeeping I got for us today. Let's hop into the list. And kicking things off with number 5, we have 2022's The Whale. A reclusive, morbidly obese English teacher attempts to reconnect with his estranged teenage daughter. Again, I understand that this is not a traditional pick for a disturbing movies list. Hell, I don't even know if this technically qualifies, but it certainly affected me in a lot of ways that just made me say this is a one and done. And I think on one hand, I could understand people looking at this movie and seeing it as kind of an uplifting kind of, a tale of persevering through, some really harsh events and some really terrible life decisions that kind of get somebody in a really tough spot. But I took away a very different message from this movie. And when I saw this in theaters, it was something that hit me on some pretty personal levels in a lot of ways. Now, I am not saying that I'm morbidly obese, but I am a bigger guy. I am on the thicker side, and body dysmorphia, things like that, is something that I'm man enough to admit that, yes, I've dealt with. I've looked at myself in the mirror and, had a little bit of a wince and been, I think I should tighten that up. And I do plan on working on it. We'll get there eventually. But this is also something where touching on just that, but then seeing somebody who really just fell so far into a hole of depression and just finding this method of dealing with it that is just as simple as, eating a bunch of snacks and, garbage food that makes us feel good, gives us that serotonin rush, but taking it to the furthest extent and becoming this whale, essentially. It is just a really tough watch for me. This is something that seeing somebody just kind of break and reach that point where they've decided, you know what, enough's enough. I am going to, in one of the most grotesque and horrifically depraved ways I can think of when it comes to just self-mutilation, eating yourself to death. I mean, that is just something that I didn't think would affect me nearly as much as it has. I do think this is a great movie. I think that Brendan Fraser's performance is excellent, and so is the rest of the cast here. I mean, everybody is really on point. Darren Aronofsky is, of course, no stranger to the disturbing stuff, and this is another one that, again, not the most conventional, but certainly has some very tragic, very deep roots that hit me in a very particular spot. So I think that this is one that, again, this is a one and done. This is something I don't see myself coming back to. I appreciate watching it, but I just don't know if I could ever bring myself to experience this film again. Moving on into my number 4 pick with 1998's Happiness. The lives of several individuals intertwine as they go about their lives in their own unique ways, engaging in acts which society as a whole might find disturbing in a desperate search for human connection. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that Happiness is one of those films that pops up on a lot of disturbing movies lists, and it's definitely got a spot in my heart as well, because there is certainly some interesting subplots in this movie. I mean, this movie as a whole is kind of wild. It's something that I watched back when I was kind of trying to find the most depraved, most disturbing horror films. And I found some. I did. And this is one of them. This one, definitely. Yeah, this movie bills itself as a dark comedy, and I use comedy in the lightest sense here because a lot of the stuff that our characters run through, it's extremely uncomfortable. It goes from, again, people making decisions that affect themselves in the sense of, maybe certain sexual partners, certain lifestyle changes, the ways that they kind of need to express themselves. And then there's one character in particular, a therapist, played by the great Dylan Baker, who is excellent in almost every single one of his roles. And dare I say, he's great in this, but he's also a PDF file. God, this movie does not shy away from it. No, they put you in some very uncomfortable sequences with Dylan Baker's character where he's talking to his son about, the self-relief, the stuff, what you do when you're a young man. Stuff from that to him asking about his young friends who are, also young boys and what their home life is like. When are their parents not home? It's really, really dark stuff. And, I can't get too deep into it because then YouTube will not be happy with this video. But trust me when I say that this gets really dark in a few spots, especially once what Dylan Baker's character has been doing throughout the film to some of the neighborhood boys starts to rear its ugly head. And this is a movie that, I've seen it once. Don't think I need to revisit this one again. I really don't see myself ever sitting down and feeling very happy or inspired to watch Happiness ever again. This is certainly a one and done. Stepping on over into my number 3 pick, we have 2011's Michael. Witness 5 months in the life of a PDF file who's keeping a 10-year-old boy locked in his basement. Unlike Happiness, where that movie has those kind of dark comedy roots that they're trying to kind of portray, it has some very satire-esque elements to it. Michael is very straightforward, and this is an extremely dark film. And it's something that I watched this because I saw it on another YouTuber's Disturbing Horror Movies list years ago, and I was just intrigued by the concept. It's a small film, genuinely about a guy named Michael who is keeping a boy locked up in his basement, and, I really didn't know much else about that. I knew that he was, interested in young children. I did not know how far this movie goes, and that's something that certainly stuck with me watching this. It really does not shy away from showing some very intense and grotesque imagery involving this boy named Wolfgang that he has in his basement. It's really something that I don't ever want to watch again. Like, this isn't something I'd even consider throwing on again just because of where this movie left me. After watching this, I was in a very, very shocked and cold state. I was not very happy for a few days after this. This movie had images and scenes that played through my mind, and I think one of the things that I find so hard about this film is that they try to show you what Michael's doing with this kid, and then also show you, kind of his day-to-day life and how people interact with him and how nobody knows what he's doing. And that is just so beyond infuriating that, you know, as you're watching this kid get abused and all these horrible things happening to him, you're just watching this adult who's doing it go off and just have a normal life. Just be a normal average Joe. People try to invite him to things. There's one lady who has a crush on him. It just feels so gross, and it's just like, no, like, this is not a good person. I really want to see him get his comeuppance. He certainly does, but it results in, and I will just say this is a spoiler, so if you don't want this movie spoiled for you and you want to watch it for some reason, skip ahead to maybe another minute or two. Michael ends up getting injured by Wolfgang at one point, and he ends up crashing his car trying to get himself to the hospital, and he dies. And at the end of this movie, it's supposedly, like, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's almost like weeks later, we see certain family members, and especially and particularly Michael's mother, at the apartment cleaning things up. And when she goes into the basement, she finds the door, and the film ends with her opening the door. We don't know if Wolfgang survived. We really don't know what the passage of time was like. Wolfgang could have starved to death. He could have died in that room, and she could be finding a body for all we know. Hopefully, in my heart of hearts, she finds him still alive and he gets free, but knowing just how dark and sadistic this movie was up until then, I highly doubt that's what the filmmakers were implying. Stepping into my number 2 spot, we have 2012's The Hunt. A teacher lives a lonely life, all the while struggling over his son's custody. His life is, however, slowly getting better as he finds love and receives some good news. But his new luck is about to be brutally shattered by an innocent little lie. Now, in my pursuit of being completely transparent and honest with you guys, this is a movie that I have seen now twice, and I actually do own the Blu-ray. I bought it before I'd even watched it, just because I saw that YMS back in the day was talking it and singing up its praises. And I will say this, just like The Whale, is a very well-constructed film and a very good film. The thing that I find hard about this movie, and the thing that makes me not really want to revisit it, and each time I consider doing it, I kind of steer myself away, is because this film, for those of you who don't know, is essentially, like the description said, about a man who's been struggling with some things, but for the most part, you catch up with him in a very good spot in his life. You know, he's got some tragedy in his past with a divorce and things, but everything really comes to a head and starts to fall apart when him, being a kindergarten teacher, and we're talking about the gentleman Lucas, is basically framed, is kind of the best way you could put it, and or being presented by a little girl in the town as being someone who assaulted her, being somebody who did inappropriate things to her. Now, she's like 6 or 7 years old, and the only motivation that you get for her saying this is that she was jealous because she had a crush on Lucas. Obviously, him being an adult and her being a child, he was not going to pursue any of that. He's making, you know, that's weird. What the hell is wrong with that? And watching this town, who rightfully so, they believe this man assaulted this little girl, but us, the audience, knowing that never happened. She's lying. She's just making this up because she's a jealous child. It's heartbreaking watching this man's life and this man's son's life be completely consumed by this lie. You watch as this person's life completely shatters in front of your eyes. He is being assaulted, attacked, threatened, everything under the sun. He loses just about every piece of contact, everything that he can have. He's got law on him. He's got everything in the world going on, and it's so frustrating because we, the audience, are the only ones other than him and his son who know he's innocent. And you're just trying and begging and waiting and hoping that he'll find a way to prove his innocence. And I'll tell you, it's a spoiler, but here we go. he does. He ends up getting acquitted for the charges. There's no real evidence to show that this happened. And even then, you kind of start to see him heal a little bit by the end. And you think, okay, this was rough, but he made it. Everything seems to be getting back to normal till the final shot of this movie. And this is the part that really kicks you in the teeth, because he's out hunting with a bunch of the men in the little town, the village, and, you know, they're doing this fox hunt or whatever, and he's lining up a shot, he's about to take it, and you hear a shot ring out, and the bullet hits the tree above him, and you realize that someone just tried to kill him. And it really sinks in for you. They hold that shot, and it sinks in that no matter what happens, no matter what evidence there was, no matter what goes on, he will always be labeled and having to carry what this lie was, and that he was some kind of child, you know, abuser of some sort. And it's tough. It really is a trying film. It's a very, very good movie. I have to admit that. It is something that I highly recommend you check out, but man, this movie is definitely going to test your patience, and it is going to show you somebody who, again, is purely innocent having to go through absolute and utter hell. And finally, taking the #1 spot, we have 2018's The Nightingale. Set in 1825, Claire, a young Irish convict woman, chases a British officer through the rugged Tasmanian wilderness, bent on revenge for a terrible act of violence he committed against her family. Now, The Nightingale is, just like this, one of the films that you guys were talking about constantly in the comments of my last video. You talked about this. I saw some people talk about Happiness. This is certainly a film that was a contender. It was up there for me for the first list. And, you know, I didn't put it on there because I think that Come and See was something that I thought was a bit more obscure to people, and again, just trying and knowing that I'd probably end up doing more of these, I knew I'd get around to talking about this film eventually, because yes, The Nightingale is an extremely harsh film. This is a movie that I can only recommend if you have enough patience and constitution to sit through some pretty horrific things, especially in the first act of this film. This is a movie that it tests you just like The Hunt, but only this one, I would say, more physically, because you watch this woman have everything ripped from her. Why? Because she's a peasant to these people, to these British officers who have this superiority complex over her. You watch them treat her like a rat and just rip everything away from her with no remorse, and then they abuse her, and it's horrific. I mean, the way that Jennifer Kent, the director here, explores this material, it is dark, it is twisted, but it is something that is extremely unique, and I really fell for the revenge story in this. But I have to be honest, this is such a tough watch, especially, again, this first half of this movie, that I have a very hard time seeing myself coming back and revisiting this. This is not a feel-good movie at all, folks. This is one where you are pretty satisfied by the end of it because you've watched somebody finally get their revenge, but the amount that she has to sacrifice, the things she has to go through to obtain it, I mean, it's absurd. It's absolute absurdity. I truly do love this movie. I think that it is an excellent film from start to finish. It's well written, it's well executed, but yeah, I don't think I would ever go back and revisit it, just because of how intense that opening is, and just how this film really makes you feel by the end of it. Because even though she wins, technically, I guess, does she really? Because even after getting your revenge, everybody's still gone. Well, There it is. That's another one in the bag for you guys. That is another 5 disturbing films I will never watch again. Definitely something that it does feel good. It does feel cathartic. I know I joke about how you guys are putting me through this. I do like doing this. This is very, very interesting because I don't talk about these movies all that much. So the fact that I kind of get to go back and really research and discover some of these, again, it does kind of help me get some of that grossness and ickiness off of my chest of just experiencing some of these. And yeah, like I said, I get to talk about things that I don't necessarily think I'd talk about on this channel. So I think this works out. This is a fun relationship. I hope you guys like this one just as much as you like the last one. If you did, please leave this video a like and hit that subscribe button. The next goal, 25,000, baby. Let's get there. And if we can, that would be incredible. But, I won't hold you to it. You guys are absolutely blowing my mind with how much support you've shown the channel. So I can't beg too hard. You guys are incredible. Thank you. But yes, I definitely think if you like this one, we'll do some more. I still have a long list. I assemble these lists by basically making a giant list and then just picking 5 out for every single one of these installments. I have a brutal horror movie series that I'm working on as well that I have to get another edition out for those of you who haven't seen it. And yeah, I mean, I'll keep talking about disturbing shit as long as you guys are watching it. But I will also mix in some fun stuff, which I think the next video after this one's going to be really fun. And then I have one that I'm really excited to talk about. It is disturbing stuff, but I got to tell you, it just hit me the other day and I was just like, yes, it's that time of year. Let's do it. I'm so excited. I think you guys are going to love that. But thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate you stopping by. And yeah, that's all I have for you. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell. And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.